Apple always seems to interpret these rulings more narrowly than you do. In China, they said that they had to pull less from the market than you interpreted. And in Germany, they're saying they only have to stop sales in their stores and their partners can continue to sell. So what is your interpretation of what's going on here, and why should investors believe this is real pressure on Apple?
Well, thanks, John. Well, first of all, it's not a matter of interpretation. All one has to do is read the orders in both of these venues, and you can see very clearly in China that Apple was ordered to immediately cease selling, offering for sale, and importing the models that were described, 6S through 10. And they should be doing that right now. And if they're not, there's no interpretation. They're in violation of that order. And now it's a question of how soon will that order be enforced. Even what they're saying about just 7 and 8, even what they're saying about just the 7 and the 8, you're saying 6S through 10? Sorry, I said in China. They said 7 and 8 for Germany. I'll talk about Germany in a second. In China, it's the 6S through 10, but again, as you recall, that was because those were the only models available. The new models weren't available when we brought the lawsuit. In Germany, yes, they're saying the 7 and 8. The order describes the phones that were described in the court, and those were the 7, the 8, and I think there were the 7S or 7 Plus and 8 Plus as well, plus the 10. So those are all covered. That order goes into effect as soon as and when we post a bond, but it's not an interpretation. It's a ban on, again, the sale and offer for sale. And by the way, it's not just their retail stores, it's any offer of sale.
Right. And it's a weighty bond, $1.5 billion, I believe. On the one hand, I wonder if it's so narrow that Apple only has to stop sales in its own stores, why the bond ordered for you guys to pay to protect them against losses would be so high. But also, Apple's got money to burn. They've got tons of money. Qualcomm, lots of money too, but not nearly as much. Can you play this all across the globe as you prosecute this legal fight?
Well, I think it's important. You talked about the pressure we're putting on Apple. It's really not the pressure we're putting on Apple. It's the courts and the rule of law that's putting the pressure on Apple. You may recall that Apple actually sued us first in the U.S. and then in multiple places around the world, including China. We generally have not litigated. I've been general counsel for 11 years. This is, I think, the second time we've been involved in a patent litigation that we've initiated. So what we do is we invent, we protect with the patents, and then we rely on the rule of law, not just in the U.S., but all over the world. And what you're seeing unfold now is what we've been saying for a long time, that forced into this situation, we had no choice but to protect our intellectual property. And that's what we're doing. And now what you're seeing are courts recognizing the value of the intellectual property and enforcing it in places like Germany and China, which is good news, I think, for the United States. And soon it will come in other places as well.
As we head into 2019, 5G becomes an ever more important part of Qualcomm's story. You guys have said so on your earnings calls. You have a lot of intellectual property around that. Apple is challenging your fundamental business model, the idea that not only do you sell a component, but that you have proportional value to phone makers based on how much their phone sells for. You have a lot to lose if you lose this. Is there any room for a settlement, or is that up to Apple? They don't seem eager to do that.
Well, let me just, and I could spend more time, but obviously we don't have it. Let me just make sure we remind people that our business model, which is a licensing business model, and which is a contributor to the standards that structure all of mobile communications around the world, is a model that was intended to and has expanded the ecosystem. When we first were finally able to convince the world that our technology was the best, and it was accepted in the standard, that opened up many opportunities for many other companies to come into the communications market. And that's what happened largely in Asia at the time. So we have actually this terrific horizontal model which shares our inventions with the world so that the communications market can expand as successfully as it has. It's kind of ironic to me, very ironic, that Apple, who has a proprietary model, criticizes us for our open standards model. And even more ironic, it seems to me, that Intel, who has a common interest agreement with Apple, would criticize us given their x86 approach to proprietary monopolization of that arena.